Her kindness changed his fate, and his success changed her life. What connects a simple girl and a homeless man? This story began with one random act. The autumn evening was damp and chilly. Anna hurried home under a drizzling rain, wrapping herself tightly in her coat. The city streets appeared gray and joyless, mirroring the evening's somber mood. She walked quickly, avoiding puddles, barely noticing the passers-by. But suddenly, her eyes caught sight of a man sitting on the curb. He appeared to be in his 40s, with disheveled hair and clothes that seemed unwashed for years. He sat hugging his knees, staring at a fixed point. Rain streamed down his face, yet he seemed oblivious to it. People walked past him without a glance. Some stole a quick look before turning away, as if afraid to catch his misfortune. Anna stopped. A wave of unease washed over her at the thought of walking past like everyone else. The man looked so lost and lonely that her heart ached. She wrestled with her doubts before finally approaching him. "Are you cold?" she asked, bending down slightly. The man lifted his gaze to her. His eyes were filled with despair, mixed with surprise. It seemed he hadn't expected anyone to speak to him. "A little," he replied in a hoarse voice. Anna hesitated. Fear crept in. What if he turned out to be dangerous? She studied him closely. His tired eyes emanated calmness. There was no aggression or cunning, only profound sadness and weariness. He appeared as though he wanted to say something but hesitated. Finally, he quietly uttered, "Sorry, I'm of no use to anyone." These words pierced Anna's heart. She realized that before her stood a person who had simply lost faith in life. She extended her hand. "Come with me. My home is warm. You can rest and warm up." The man stared at her for a long moment, as if trying to determine if she was sincere. Then he nodded and slowly stood up. At home, Anna paused at the threshold, feeling a slight tremor. "Maybe I acted too hastily," she thought, but quickly dismissed the doubts. She retrieved clean clothes belonging to her father, who now lived in another city, and timidly handed them to the man. "Here, take these. The bathroom is over there," she said, pointing to the door. The man took the clothes with the utmost care, as though afraid to ruin them. "Thank you," he murmured, barely meeting her gaze. As the man went into the bathroom, Anna began preparing tea. Her thoughts were a whirlwind. She tried to imagine what his life might have been like before he ended up on the streets. Who was he? What had led him to this state? The sound of running water in the bathroom seemed unusually loud in the apartment's silence. Deciding to offer him something to eat, Anna headed to the kitchen to make sandwiches, though her hands trembled slightly. She pictured the man, perhaps for the first time in a long while, experiencing warmth and comfort. How long could it have been since he last saw anything like this? She wondered. The water kept running, and Anna found herself trying to piece together his story from the fragments of his presence. Some time passed, the water stopped, and silence filled the space. The man emerged from the bathroom, cautiously opening the door. He looked as if he was relearning how to be a person. He wore clean clothes that were slightly oversized but neat. His hair was washed, and damp strands were combed back. He stood in the doorway, glancing around as if afraid to disturb something important. "I thank you," he said, barely above a whisper. Anna saw how he shifted nervously from foot to foot. His hands trembled slightly, but it was more than mere nervousness. It was the realization of something new, as though he had crossed a threshold into another life. Anna gestured for him to sit at the table. An hour passed before the man left the bathroom. He wore clean clothes that felt unfamiliar but comfortable. His hair was damp and neatly combed back. But most of all, it was his face that had changed. While traces of hardship lingered in his eyes, there was now a quiet resolve. Anna noticed how he straightened his posture, as if determined to show that he was ready to start anew. "Thank you," he said awkwardly, sitting down at the table. "My name is Victor." Anna smiled, handing him a cup of hot tea. "I'm Anna. Please eat. You probably haven't had a warm meal in a while." Victor took the sandwich, staring at it for a few moments as though unsure it was real. Then he began eating slowly, savoring each bite with gratitude. Anna watched him and knew she had made the right choice despite her doubts. Victor ate silently but with visible appreciation. Anna observed him and reflected on how her impulsive act, though unusual, had turned out to be the right decision. "You know," Victor finally said, setting down his cup, "you're probably wondering how I ended up on the street." Anna nodded slightly, not wanting to interrupt. Victor looked off into the distance, gathering his thoughts, and began speaking. "I worked as an accountant in a large company. I had a good life, a wife, 2 kids, a house in a quiet neighborhood. My wife and I dreamed of traveling once the kids were grown. Everything seemed perfect until one day my boss called me in. He accused me of embezzling money. I was shocked. I had always worked honestly and by the rules, but the documents they showed me were forged and my signatures were fake. Someone had framed me." Victor sighed, his voice growing softer. "I tried to prove my innocence, but no one listened. The court ruled against me. My reputation was destroyed. Colleagues turned away, friends stopped calling. I was fired and rumors spread quickly throughout the city. People looked at me as though I were a criminal." He lowered his head, his shoulders trembling. "My wife couldn't bear it. She took the kids and went to her parents. She said she couldn't live with someone who was seen as a thief. I was left alone with no job, no family. My savings quickly ran out. I tried to find any work, but no one would hire me. The case was too high profile. Eventually, I lost my home and ended up on the streets." Anna listened without interrupting. Her heart ached with pity. She could see how painful it was for him to recall these events, but she understood that he needed to speak. "It's been a long time since then," Victor continued, attempting a faint smile. "I got used to being a nobody, used to people turning away. But you..." He looked at Anna with gratitude. "You're the first person in a long time to look at me like I'm still a human being." Anna felt tears streaming down her cheeks. She reached out and gently touched Victor's hand. After a long pause, she quietly said, "Do you know why I decided to help you?" Victor shook his head, watching her attentively. Anna lowered her eyes as if gathering her courage. "I had a brother, Alex. He was always a bit of an adventurer. He dreamed of traveling, of freedom. A few years ago, he moved to another city to chase his dreams. I remember seeing him off at the train station. He looked so happy, so confident. But something went wrong. He was robbed, left without documents or money. Alex became homeless in a foreign city, in a country where he didn't know the language or anyone who could help him." Her voice trembled, but she continued. "At first, he tried to manage on his own, but soon he began calling me. In every call I could hear hope, that things would get better, that it was just a temporary struggle. I begged him to come back, promised to help, but he refused. He said he didn't want to be a burden and that he could get through it on his own. But one day the calls stopped. I tried to find him, to go to him, but one day he just disappeared. No hospitals, no police stations had any record of him. No one helped him then. No one reached out to him. I still blame myself for it, for not being able to save him." She wiped her tears with her palm and looked at Victor. "When I saw you alone in the rain, it was like seeing Alex again. And I realized I simply couldn't walk past." Over the next few days, Anna helped Victor get back on his feet. She bought him new clothes, showed him where to look for temporary work, and even took him to a social aid center. Victor turned out to be a grateful and decent man, never taking her kindness for granted. He began to look better, more confident. Anna increasingly noticed in him a genuine, kind person who had simply faced too many hardships. Gradually, a special bond formed between them. They started spending a lot of time together. Anna wanted Victor to feel needed and valuable, so she suggested he help her tidy up the house. Together, they vacuumed the rooms, rearranged books on shelves, and organized items. Victor smiled, feeling useful for the first time in a long while. Time flew during these activities. Anna told Victor funny stories from her life, and he, though rarely, began to laugh. His laughter was quiet but sincere. One day, they unexpectedly burst out laughing together when Victor accidentally knocked over a bucket of water. Their laughter filled the entire apartment, making it even warmer. Sometimes they went grocery shopping together. Anna taught him how to pick the ripest fruits, while Victor carried the heavy bags. These outings turned into little adventures. They talked about everything from books to the weather. Anna couldn't help but notice how Victor was growing more confident and calm, as if starting to believe that life could be different. However, not everyone around Anna supported her decision. Friends and acquaintances openly mocked her. "Did you seriously take in a homeless man?" they asked sarcastically. "That's dangerous. What if he—" Anna didn't listen. She saw in Victor what others refused to acknowledge: his inner strength and desire to change. She didn't care about their words, though sometimes they hurt. Even her relationship with her father became strained because of her decision to help Victor. He seemed unable to understand why she would take such a risk by letting a stranger into her home. Anna felt the weight of his words pressing on her, making her doubt. Her father spoke of safety and responsibility, reminding her to think of herself first. These conversations often escalated into tense moments, leaving Anna with a bitter feeling. She tried to explain that her actions were driven not just by compassion but by a deep sense of duty, but her father remained adamant. Each time after such talks, she felt the burden of their disagreements weighing heavily on her heart. Yet her belief in the rightness of her actions never wavered. However, the tension between them continued to grow, and at some point, her father stopped speaking to her entirely. His disapproval and disappointment left a deep scar on her heart, adding even more to her internal struggle. Months passed. Victor rented a small apartment for himself. He thanked Anna for everything she had done, but she merely waved it off. "It's nothing, I just wanted to help." However, Victor couldn't leave it at that. He felt he owed it to her to repay her kindness. Once he found a new job, he poured all his efforts into proving his gratitude and showing that he could start over. Victor worked hard at his new job, striving to show his best qualities and rebuild his lost skills. Each day was a small victory, strengthening his confidence and determination to move forward. One evening, while having tea with Anna, he told her about his hobby. "You know, before all this happened, I was interested in psychology. I loved reading books about how people overcome challenges, how they change their lives. It seemed like something distant from me, but now I realize I've experienced much of it myself." Anna looked at him with surprise. "Psychology? That's so unexpected. But at the same time, it's so fitting. You're such a perceptive person." Victor smiled shyly. "Maybe. But honestly, I never thought it could be useful in life." Now, Anna listened intently as he talked about the books he had read and the people whose stories had inspired him. Her eyes lit up. She saw in him a person who, despite his hardships, was striving for something greater. "That's wonderful, Victor," she said. "If you feel this is your path, don't stop. Maybe this is exactly what will help you start a new life." But not everything came easily to Victor. A few days after yet another rejection at a job interview, he returned to Anna's apartment in a state of deep despair. Sitting at the table with a cup of cold tea, he sighed heavily and whispered, "Anna, I can't do this anymore. I'm trying, I really am, but every day feels like a wall in front of me. No one wants to hire me. And maybe I'll just stay a nobody forever." Anna saw his slumped shoulders and vacant gaze. Her heart tightened. She moved closer and sat across from him, gently taking his hands in hers. "Victor, I know it feels like there's no way out right now," she said softly. "But you've already made so many steps forward. You can't give up now. You're stronger than you think." Victor lifted his eyes to hers, full of despair. "Anna, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," he said quietly. "Every rejection feels like it's shouting at me that it's all pointless, that I'm just not made for a new life." She tightened her grip on his hands and looked deep into his eyes. "For yourself. For those who will one day see your story and be inspired. You've already proven that you can change your life. Yes, it's hard, but you're not alone. I'm here, Victor. And I believe in you." Her warm, sincere words touched Victor's heart deeply. He felt a faint but firm spark ignite within him. He couldn't let her down. He realized that Anna was not just his support but an anchor that kept him from giving up completely. In the days that followed, Victor resumed his job search. At every interview, he gave it his all, keeping Anna's words in mind. When things got too difficult, he would return home, and her presence would give him strength. One day, Victor received the long-awaited call offering him a job. He was hired as an assistant in a small library, where he could use his knowledge and skills. It was a modest step, but for him it meant the world. That evening, he came home with a light smile and joy in his eyes. "Anna, I got a job," he announced excitedly as he walked into the apartment. Anna clapped her hands and, unable to hide her emotions, hugged him. "Victor, that's amazing news. I'm so proud of you." They decided to celebrate the occasion. Anna prepared dinner and Victor, beaming with joy, helped set the table. The evening was filled with laughter and warmth. They talked about the future, new opportunities, and the importance of never giving up. A few months later, Victor was able to rent a small apartment for himself. It was a cozy space where he began a new chapter in his life. Before moving out, he spent a long time thanking Anna for her support and faith in him. When Victor moved into his apartment, loneliness became his constant companion. Days passed one after another, filled with routine and the quiet realization that his life was beginning to stabilize. Yet the emptiness inside remained. Anna, who initially visited him often, gradually started avoiding him. Their conversations grew shorter, her gaze colder. Victor noticed the change but didn't dare to ask, fearing the answer would confirm his suspicions. Anna never told him that the reason for her distance was the ridicule of those around her. Her friends kept making snide remarks. "Are you still hanging out with that ex-homeless guy?" She felt the pressure, which made her pull away. Victor sensed the chill in her behavior but kept silent. All he could do was speculate. Meanwhile, Anna's relationships with her friends grew increasingly strained. They made no effort to hide their disapproval of her decision to take in a homeless man, considering it strange and risky. Their conversations were filled with hints and reproaches that became more blunt over time. This began to weigh heavily on Anna. At first, she tried to ignore it, firmly believing that she had done the right thing. But the constant pressure from her friends, their doubts and judgmental glances gradually started to erode her confidence. Thoughts like, "What if they're right? And maybe I really am being too impulsive," began to haunt her. Anna felt torn between her desire to help and her need to maintain her relationships with those close to her. Day by day, she found herself speaking less warmly to Victor and being less open in her gestures. She smiled less often and hesitated longer before offering help. Victor noticed the changes but didn't dare to ask, sensing that the reason lay beyond their interactions. One day, while returning from work, Victor happened to see Anna at a street cafe. She was sitting at a table with a man, both smiling and looking happy. The man was clearly her new boyfriend. This sight stirred a mix of emotions in Victor. He stopped for a moment, watching them from a distance, then, feeling a heaviness in his heart, continued on his way. That moment confirmed for him that their paths had diverged for good. No one had said anything to him, but he could guess that someone new had entered her life, becoming an important part of her days and gradually pushing their bond aside. The autumn evening was windy and cold. Victor stood at Anna's doorstep, holding a box with a book inside, a symbol of gratitude and farewell. He wanted to tell her he was moving to another city to start anew. He had been offered a job he was well qualified for, giving him hope for a better future. The door opened, but instead of Anna, a man stood before him. "Anna's not home," the man said curtly, blocking the entrance. "I just wanted to." But the man didn't let him finish. His face twisted in contempt, and he shoved Victor in the shoulder, forcing him out of the doorway. Victor stumbled and fell, the box slipping from his hands. The man gave the fallen box a brief glance before walking away, leaving Victor sitting on the ground. He stared at the dirty pavement as the cold wind chilled him to the bone. He felt a deep bitterness of humiliation and pain welling up inside him. Along with it came unexpected emotions. Seeing the man who now stood beside Anna, Victor felt not only sorrow but also a strange, gnawing jealousy. He realized that his attachment to Anna ran far deeper than he had acknowledged. These feelings, mingled with resentment and helplessness, overwhelmed him completely. Realizing his state, he knew he couldn't stay. With a heavy heart, Victor left, feeling that his presence was now unnecessary. This moment became yet another blow, pushing him to reflect on leaving the past behind and finding his place in the world. This was the final push that helped him make the ultimate decision. Victor moved to another city, determined to leave the past behind. There, he was offered a job related to psychology. It turned out that Victor had been deeply interested in this subject for much of his life and possessed extensive knowledge. Now he had the opportunity to develop his skills, put them into practice, and do what he truly loved. He eagerly studied books, attended lectures, and devoted all his free time to understanding the nature of pain and trauma. Years of hard work made him an expert in psychology. His work on overcoming fear and rebuilding one's sense of self earned recognition, and one of his books even won an award. More than 6 years passed. Anna, long since forgetting Victor, lived happily. She married her boyfriend, and their family seemed perfect. Victor occasionally stumbled upon her photographs on social media, seeing her radiant smile. Each time, after closing yet another image, he would gaze at the night sky outside his window and think of her. He knew Anna had likely forgotten him, but her kindness had once been the lifeline that pulled him from the depths. She would never know that her actions had inspired him to reach new heights. Victor continued to write, and his books enjoyed great success. They often explored the theme of how random acts of kindness could change someone's life, though he never mentioned Anna by name. To him, she remained a deeply personal memory, one he cherished in his heart. As the years passed, Victor noticed women around him showing interest. Now, he was a successful and confident man, but he paid no attention to their advances. He couldn't allow himself to forget Anna. Her image had become a symbol of purity and kindness for him. Each evening, he remembered her smile and the moments when she had selflessly extended her hand to help him. This memory warmed his soul, even as it filled it with a quiet sadness. Several more years went by. One day, Victor felt a sharp pain in his chest. At first, he dismissed it as exhaustion, but the pain didn't subside. It only grew worse. He was forced to seek medical attention. The diagnosis was serious: a heart attack. Doctors explained that the cause lay in the accumulated stress and emotions Victor had carried inside him for so long. His condition worsened, and it soon became clear that his time was limited. Lying in the hospital bed, Victor realized that his days were numbered. He stared at the ceiling for a long time, reflecting on his life. He thought of Anna, of how her kindness had given him a chance to start over. In those moments, he decided he needed to thank her, even if he would never know whether she read his words. He asked a nurse for a pen and paper. Despite his weakness, his thoughts were remarkably clear. With each word he wrote, Victor felt his heart fill with peace, and tears welled up in his eyes. Memories of the day Anna first reached out to help him flooded back. He saw her kind gaze, heard her warm voice, and felt again that spark of hope she had reignited in him. He described how Anna's actions had inspired him to change his life. He thanked her for the light she had brought into his darkest hour. At the end of the letter he wrote, "It's all thanks to you. I still love you." Victor transferred everything he had earned over the years to Anna. His home, his awards, the income from his books, everything that had been the result of his hard work and new path. He placed the will with the letter and handed it to the doctor, asking it to be delivered to Anna. He was certain that she deserved it more than anyone. When Anna received Victor's letter and will, along with them was his final work, a book. Her hands trembled as she unwrapped the package. Victor's name was on the cover, and inside were pages filled with his reflections on life, struggles, and the power of kindness. But what struck Anna most was that throughout the book he mentioned her. Her kindness and actions had become the central theme of his reflections. With every word she read, images of their conversations, his timid attempts to regain his dignity, and their shared moments came rushing back. Victor had described her as the light that pulled him from darkness, and she couldn't hold back her tears. Each sentence felt alive, as though Victor were beside her once more. She clutched the book, feeling the warmth of his soul embedded in every page. She learned that his books not only inspired people, but also gave them a sense that their pain and struggles were not unique, that they were not alone. People shared how Victor had supported them in their darkest moments, helping them find the strength for new beginnings. Each of these stories confirmed that his final years had not been lived in vain. Anna stood aside, listening to these accounts, her heart filling with pride and deep respect. She realized that his journey, which had begun in despair, had turned into a source of light and hope for many. In that moment, she understood that his legacy was not just his books and success, but also the hundreds of lives he had helped transform. One by one, people approached his grave, laying flowers and bowing their heads briefly. Anna noticed that some of them brought his books, while others held them tightly as if they were treasures. She saw how deeply Victor had touched these people's lives. Despite the sadness of loss, it filled her soul with quiet joy. When the ceremony ended, Anna stepped forward to his grave, now covered in a blanket of flowers. She felt a warmth in her chest, as if Victor had left her an invisible message, his gratitude for that moment when she chose not to walk past him on that cold autumn evening. Her act of kindness had set in motion a journey that turned Victor into a man whose life and work would be remembered for years to come. As Anna made her way home, she felt a strange but comforting sense of peace. She realized that Victor had left behind not only a cherished memory, but also an important lesson. Even one kind action can spark something great. She now knew that his story had become part of her own, and that the kindness she had once shown would continue to live on in the hearts of all the people he had inspired. A few weeks after the funeral, holding Victor's will in her hands, Anna made an important decision. She knew she couldn't simply leave his legacy as it was. Victor would have wanted his help to continue inspiring and saving others. Using the resources he had left her, Anna set out to fulfill her dream, opening a center for the homeless, a place where anyone could find support, warmth, and a chance at a new life. The work on the center began with searching for the perfect building. Anna wasn't just looking for a space. She wanted a place that could truly feel like home to people. She envisioned a sanctuary filled with comfort, care, and safety. When she finally found the right building, she poured her heart into making it welcoming. Alongside volunteers, she painted walls, arranged furniture, and selected books for a small library. Every corner of the center was imbued with her warmth and love. The opening of the center became a significant event. On the day its doors opened for the first time, Anna stood at the entrance, watching people begin to arrive. Among them were those who had lost hope, who were weary from loneliness, and who simply sought a place where they would be accepted as they were. Anna saw their hesitant steps, and her heart swelled with confidence that she had made the right choice. The center offered more than shelter and hot meals. It hosted sessions with psychologists, skill development workshops, and employment consultations. Anna was determined to ensure that everyone who came through its doors felt they had a future. She often thought of Victor, his journey, his efforts to help others, and it inspired her to keep going. With each passing day, the center came to life. Anna watched as people began to change, as a light returned to their eyes. She knew it was all possible because of Victor, his belief in kindness and the power of transformation. This center became his legacy, a living testament to how one act of kindness could change countless lives. And every time she walked through the halls of the center, Anna felt Victor's presence. His spirit lived in those walls and in the hearts of those who had found hope once more. One day, after a long estrangement, Anna's father appeared at her doorstep. His face was tired, and his eyes carried a mix of guilt and regret. He stood silently until Anna, surprised by his visit, invited him in. As soon as he crossed the threshold, he suddenly embraced her tightly. Anna felt his shoulders trembling and his breath faltering. Without words, he conveyed all the pain and remorse he felt for not supporting her when she had needed him most. Anna stood there, holding him in return, sensing that this moment was washing away years of misunderstanding and hurt. They sat together for a long time in silence until he began to speak. He told her he had heard Victor's story, and it had deeply moved him, forcing him to reconsider everything he had said and believed before. He admitted that he had been wrong to judge her. His words were difficult for him to say, but Anna saw the sincerity in his eyes, and it touched her deeply. From that moment on, their relationship began to heal. Her father started visiting more often, showing the care and support she had longed for. He listened to her stories about Victor, about how she had seen in him a person who just needed a chance. Anna felt their bond grow stronger as old wounds faded into the background. This moment became another confirmation for her that kindness could not only save but also heal. Those who had once criticized Anna began to change their views. The depth of her actions and the impact she had on Victor made many of them regret their harsh words. Some, summoning courage, came to her home to express their condolences and support. They spoke of how amazed they were by her kindness, and how this story had changed their understanding of helping others. Others, unable to admit their mistakes openly, sent messages of solace through mutual acquaintances, remaining in the background. Yet even these gestures showed that their hearts had been touched by the story. Anna welcomed these visitors with a quiet smile and a grateful nod, but deep down, she felt that the true reward for her kindness was not in their words. She had seen how acts of goodness could transform lives, how her actions had given Victor a chance for a new beginning, and now inspired many others. This reminded her of how a single act of kindness could leave a profound mark. Subscribe to the channel and hit the like button so you don't miss more heartwarming stories.